Hey there, you sexy beast. This is Ariel DeVito with Be More Than Fit Personal Training, bringing you your weekly health and fitness life hack. I've got a big question to ask. Are you letting your mind bully your body? Accepting ourselves just as we are means disconnecting our past experiences from what we believe is possible for us in the future. We don't have to do anything. We get to do anything we choose that is good for us. And that looks different for every body. You now have full permission, as of today, to evict any bully tendencies that have resided in your mind. And you can start accepting compassion for who you are, who you were created to be, and the invigorating possibilities of the choices that lie ahead. So choose wisely. For more tips or to speak with a trainer, contact us through our website at www.bemorthanfit.com or on our Facebook page, BMTF Studio. This is Ariel reminding you that you deserve the best quality of life available, and it's yours for the taking.
All right, everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Killeleagh Show. I'm here with a beautiful goddess of a guest, Francine Rivera, and I am so looking forward to sharing her with all of you. And in fact, how beautiful that we just hopped off of yoga class together where she taught for an hour and a half, beautiful Kundalini class. And we're just going to talk a little bit today about the journey in yoga, how we connected, her love of creativity. You can look behind her in her home and just see all of the beauty. So Francine, welcome and thank you for being part of today's show.
Thank you. What a beautiful introduction.
Oh my gosh, there's so much I could say. I think I explained a little bit to you before, but this show has really transitioned from being this place to bring positive news to the world and kind of like defy the doom and gloom of mainstream media, but recently really focused on beautiful souls who are on this planet to do values-driven work, who are really just living with passion and purpose. And so for so many reasons, I wanted to have you here. But I'd love for you to introduce yourself. So Francine is down in Ithaca, New York, and her love of creativity just inspires me. We connected through the yoga farm. But Francine, if you would just share a little bit about what brought you to Ithaca, a little bit about who you are and how you came into yoga.
So I grew up in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, New York, in East Williamsburg. I lived there. I lived in New York City until I decided I wanted to start a family. I wanted to have children, and I moved here to have more space, to be in the country, to be in a different setting that I thought would be better for my children at that time. So that's what kind of inspired me to move to Ithaca. And it's definitely grown on me. It was a big, big change.
I'm sure.
It was a very big change. At first, I was like, no. But then eventually I was like, oh, this place is awesome. This is great. This feels like home.
Well, and when you were down there, you owned your own shop and had a lot of different things going on, didn't you?
When I was in New York, when I lived in New York.
Yeah.
So I was a jewelry, well, I still am. I am a jewelry designer. And at 19, I started designing jewelry, and I used to sell my pieces on the street in New York City in Soho. So I set up a table. I learned how to make jewelry from this girl who was a street vendor. I would walk by her every day on my way to the train, and I would stop and I would sit with her and I'd talk to her and I'd talk her ears off and ask her questions about how to make jewelry. What is that stone? What are you doing? Oh, that's so cool. And then eventually she would show me. Sometimes she would show me, and then I asked her where I could buy things like that. How do I get my hands on a pair of pliers? And she told me everything. And I would come come and I would sit with her and learn from her. And eventually I decided to open up my own little table. And that's how it happened. That's how it all started. I opened up a table in Soho on Broadway. And that's what I did for 9 years. And in between that time, I opened up a skincare company. So after I designed and I was selling my jewelry on the street. And after 3 years, me and a partner were able to save enough money, and we were like, we don't want to do this anymore. We don't want to sell on the street, even though it was amazing. It's a hustle. It's a lot of work. It's 6 a.m. until 10, 11 o'clock at night. It's rough work.
I can imagine.
So we want to own a store. Isn't that the dream, right? Everyone's like, I want my own store. So we really wanted to own a store, started searching and thinking of ideas, whether or not jewelry would work, or if jewelry just worked best outside on a table, because it was it was easier that way. And then I had this like amazing, I walked into a store in Soho. It was a skincare store, and I fell in love with everything. And I was so inspired, and I said, I can do this. And that's that I was 22 at the time, 22. And I was just like, sometimes at that age, you think you could do anything. You're really fearless, right? I was fearless at 22, 23. I just was like, this is what we're doing. I'm going to research it. I'm going to figure it out, and we're going to do this. And my partner was definitely more, we were opposites. So I was more fearless and driven, and he was definitely more like, no, there's steps that have to take place, and this has to be like this. And we got to think about the finances. And I'm like, screw the finances. Spend it all. It's going to work. I know it's going to work. So that's kind of how Soapology started. And from there, we figured out a way to rent the store in the meatpacking district on 8th Avenue between 13th and 14th Street, and made lots of mistakes, but it's still open today. I sold my half of the company when I decided to move here and start a family. But yes, that's my Brooklyn story, my New York City story, adult life story. Yeah.
It's so beautiful. Every time I talk to you, this like additional layer unfolds, right? It's like this beautiful blooming lotus. And I love learning all of the details because, you could write a book, Francine. I mean, and I can only imagine the hustle of the lifestyle of being out there. I do have to say, I love all of your creations. So for anyone who's listening and watching right now, you can find Francine on Instagram, Thorn and Thistle Wellness. She also has a website. It's thornandthistle.com, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thorn and letter N, Thistle. Yep.
Perfect. And I've just, I've loved your creations. They're inspired. They feel so personalized, right? I mean, especially because I do have one piece that's completely personalized. Yeah.
Yes. Sometimes they are. Sometimes I take custom orders as well, and people have like the most amazing ideas for what they're looking for. And I'm like, ooh, yeah, let's do it. So yeah.
Yeah. And, and different gems with different meanings. And I just love it. So one of the things that's really intriguing to me is during your journey when you were down in New York, did you start your journey into yoga then? Or was it only once you came to Ithaca?
No, I started back then. I've been doing yoga for a very long time, but as a student. So I would go almost every day, but I was doing hot yoga, which was probably not a good idea with my Pitta energy. But Pitta is fire energy. But anyway, for those who don't know, and listening. But
I know, I forget. We have to translate those things.
Yeah, I try to translate those things. But yes, I would do yoga every day. I mostly practiced Ashtanga or Vinyasa, power yoga, or hot yoga. Those were my go-tos throughout the week. And one day I just was when I moved here. See, I moved here. I moved here. I got married. I had children with my husband, my ex-husband now, and a lot of things. And I continued to do yoga. But what led me into, well, I don't know, are we heading into Kundalini yoga? I'm sorry.
No, it's totally okay. It's totally okay. Anywhere you want to go, because what I really want to share, obviously, is your classes, but also some of the offerings coming up for Yoga Farm. But like knowing how you arrived here is so great.
Mm-hmm. So yes, how I arrived at Yoga Farm and how I arrived to practicing Kundalini yoga. So when I moved here, started a family, and my marriage did not work out, and I was in a very rough place emotionally, mentally. I didn't know who I was anymore. I had completely lost myself, and I was having a really, really hard time. And I remember feeling like I wasn't even like sort of like a shell of myself. Like there was nothing right left for me to give anymore, except to my children. And I just felt really lost. And that was how my marriage ended. And I remember one night in the process of the divorce and in the process of grieving, waking up with this pain in my chest that wouldn't go away. And I was just, I was filled with emotion, and I ran downstairs at my old place where I used to live. And this was after the marriage was over, and this was a while after, actually, but it had just built up. It had built up and welled up inside of me to the point where it had to go somewhere. There was no way I can contain it anymore. And I was just crying and begging for an answer, for a sign. And the first thing that came to my mind was to book a retreat, to get away. Escape right now, right? That's the 9. I'm a 9, and here I'm 9. I was like, I'm out of here. I gotta escape. So I knew that my children were going to be with their father for 5 nights, and it was a holiday, and it was his turn, and I was just like, fine. And I was still getting used to that. It was the beginning, and I hadn't been separated from my children before. It was every day, all day, every night, through the night. And then I was going through that as well. So it was really hard for me, and I had a hard time seeing it, accepting that that was the reality, and knowing that that was the problem. Mm-hmm. Right? It took me a while to realize that, that's what it was. And that's how disconnected I was with myself at that point. So I got online, and I did what I thought was best, what came to me in that moment. And I booked this retreat, the first retreat and the only retreat that was available actually during those days that I had and I could go. And it was to go natural in Jamaica. And I was like, that's what it is then. That's where I'm going. Whatever it is, that's where I'm going. There's no other choice. So I booked it. And then I was petrified. It's like, I'm going by myself. I have no one. I had never traveled alone before. And I was just like, oh no, I don't know anyone there. But I went, and I met a healer when I was there, and she was wonderful. And she read my chakras. And she told me that my heart chakra was broken. No, it's just needed to be healed. Chakras don't break. Just kidding. But she said that I was experiencing some turbulence in my heart chakra and in my intuition, my third eye chakra. So there was no connection, she said. The connection was lost, and that I had to find a way to fix that. I don't like the word fix, but that's what's coming to me right now.
Restore.
So restore that. Exact. Thank you. Beautiful. So, and then during the course of the retreat, she also gave me this this really great massage that, like, it was like all along the meridians and the acupoints. It was just like really crazy, intense massage. And then she also read my cards, my tarot cards, and it was just very insightful. It was very revealing. And she recommended, when I was leaving, she said, I recommend Kundalini yoga. And I said, I've never heard of that. Interesting. Cool. All right. I'll go find that when I get back, because I feel so much better right now. And whatever you say, I'm going to do, because I was on a mission to get better, to heal myself. I was on that mission and I knew I needed it. So I went back home. I did everything she said. She told me to wear little bindies that she had blessed. And I did it every day until the pack was gone that she gave me. And I wore lots of green for my heart chakra every day, like she told me. And I went online as soon as I got home and I typed in Kundalini yoga in Ithaca, New York. And the only place that popped up, the only place was Yoga Farm. And I said, oh my gosh, look at that. I've always wanted to go to this place. And it was always so far away from where I lived. And I never had the opportunity because I had to always be back by a certain time for the children, because anyway, we're not going to get into that. But I always had to be back. And it was so hard to go back and forth, 15 minutes out and 15 minutes back. And then take that hour and a half or hour class, right? So it's a long time when you have young children sometimes. But now I had time. So I said, and the timing of the classes was exactly the days that I didn't have the children, that they were with their father. And everything was just like divine order. It was just it was so easy. It just fell into place. So I remember I called up, I emailed Christopher from Yoga Farm. And I was like, I want to be a yoga teacher. Basically, that's what I said. I want to learn how to teach Kundalini yoga. And I had never even done Kundalini yoga before. So funny. But I had done other forms of yoga. So I said, how different could this be? I mean, come on, it's going to be fine. And he was like, sure, come in and you can meet the instructors and blah, blah, blah. So that's when I set up the appointment. And that's when I sat down in the studio with Daniela, Jeannie, and Christopher. And I was just like, is this real? Are these people real? This is awesome. They're amazing. They're like the most amazing people I've ever met in my life. So yeah. Then I was just like, I'm sold. I'm good. I'm here. This is where I belong. This is where I'm supposed to be. And from there, that's
an incredible journey. And I can imagine the feeling when you arrived in that room, because they are so spectacular. I have to say two things about your journey, and then I want to talk about what's coming up at Yoga Farm. But number one, who can't identify with that feeling right before you decided to go to Jamaica, right? Like, I mean, just last year, just going through the whole year, going through the experience of isolation and, for so many people, so much lost, and so much gained in terms of perspective and, shifts in lifestyle and that sort of thing. But so much happened. And so who cannot identify with that feeling of being the shell, right? Like, and being disengaged. So it's powerful to me that is ultimately the feeling that brought you to this path of yoga.
And another thing that's really crazy about the whole story, it's sort of wild, is I started with training with Jeannie, who's the the lead teacher of Kundalini Yoga at Yoga Farm. I started private teacher training with her in January. And then in March, COVID hit. And I have to say that if I hadn't met them before COVID, I don't know what would have happened, right, to me. Like, I feel like it would have been like, I would have been so lost. And then it was like, it happened so perfectly, the way everything fell into place at that time, at that moment. So I just wanted to mention that as well, because that's something that replays in my head often. I think about it and it blows me away.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting is that you sharing that relates to what I wanted to say, my number 2, which is like, it's hard to imagine you being at a point in your life when you had nothing to pour into anybody else, because the way I connected to you was somewhere in the spring when you first started teaching on Thursdays online. And, that became your anchor, but you became my anchor, and the Yoga Farm became my anchor, along with hundreds and hundreds, well, probably at this point, thousands of students over the course of the year, because the way it unfolded just allowed so much more access to have the teacher trainings online and to be able to reach people all around the world. And the fact that it could unravel in that way, right? To have you come from this place where you needed this healing, where you needed this sort of restoration of self, right? And we hear all the time that we don't have to be perfect or complete to help others, right? Mm-hmm. We just need to be 1 or 2 steps ahead. And listening to you tell this story is such a great reminder of that. Because for me, I just to show up every week and see your face, which just radiates this loving energy. And yet now I can look back and know, like, at that point, you're really just these few steps ahead of restoring self and giving that back, because now you're pouring back into yourself.
Well, that's the key, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Is being of service. It really saved me. And it hit me when COVID hit. I had found Kundalini Yoga and it was helping me, and I was feeling better and I was feeling great. And I was chanting every night for 20 minutes after the kids fell asleep. And I was just felt so inspired and so good. And then COVID hit and I said, I have this thing, I have Kundalini Yoga, and and there are so many people who have never heard of it, who don't know about it.
Yeah.
And maybe they need it too, because the same way I need it, maybe they need it. And I remember asking Jeannie, I said to her in one of our meetings, I said, do you think I'm ready? Do you think I'm ready to teach? Because it's only been a few months. And she was like, yeah, totally. I think you're ready. Go ahead. It's like, okay. And I started putting together these little classes, and then, yeah, that's how it started for me.
So beautiful. So for people who are watching and listening, I think rather than attempting to get into the long form of what is Kundalini Yoga, right? Because we could go on for days. In my mind, it's awakening of that radiance that resides within us, right? To put it in the most simple terms that any one person could understand if you've never even done yoga before. And to know it is to experience it. So Francine hosts class every Thursday night at 6 p.m., streamed live through Thorn and Thistle Wellness on Instagram. You can come to the Zoom and be able to connect personally. So we will put that information down below so that you could come attend class.
And I also go live in the Yoga Farm Kundalini community, which is open and available to anyone who wants to join.
Perfect. That is another great reminder, because that's another space to really just get your toes wet and begin to experience not only Kundalini yoga, but what the community is like, and what and how it feels to be immersed in a community of practitioners. And along those lines, if you're familiar with Kundalini, there is actually another yoga teacher training that is beginning on March 1st, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
With the
Yeah. So 300-hour. And I had the honor and privilege to participate in this program in the fall. And we covered so many different areas of study, from Kundalini to lunar wisdom to Enneagram.
Ayurveda.
What am I missing?
Ayurveda.
Ayurveda, yes.
Yeah.
So
body, how energy moves. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, beautiful exploration. And so if you'd like more information about that, you can head over to the Yoga Farm Kundalini community and find out all about it, because there's already been Q&A sessions, and there's plenty of information to find out a little bit more about that. But I would love to know, Francine, if you were talking to, anyone on the street, like we're going to put you back in Brooklyn, right? And you're hanging out on the street and you meet someone who's just, this beautiful soul who's never heard of Kundalini yoga. What would you say to them to express to them why they might attend a class or get to know Kundalini?
I would say to them that Kundalini yoga saved my life. Truly transformative experience. And it is an amazing way to move grief, sadness, anything that's holding you back from being in love with yourself and expressing yourself fully and just being totally alive and comfortable and happy and full of joy and bliss. Anything that you feel is in the way, it is an amazing way to move that energy and to really open up the gateway to love, to true love and bliss and joy.
Beautiful. And, I want to say one last thing, because a lot of our viewers and listeners are in Seneca Falls, Geneva area. And I took my first Kundalini class in Seneca Falls with a beautiful woman named Krisha Deal. And I remember the resistance I felt going into her class. Number one, because I also have that fire energy and I would rather be in a hot yoga class.
We always learn with exactly that.
I have learned to lean into resistance. Yeah. Uh-huh. But in our community, there was also resistance, because there was always questioning around, well, what are the chants that are happening? Or like even just coming into class and like seeing the symbol for Om, right? Mm-hmm. And I want to just remind everyone out there in the world who is watching or listening that when I just resonated with Francine, with the truth she spoke about love and being in love with yourself, the sound I made was a combination of the sounds that actually make up Om, right? Right. Mm-hmm. So when we get caught up in the idea of this being, some sort of like religious practice, just remember that there are universal sounds and feelings and emotions that can connect us all. And so if you can get beyond that and just experience it, you will also know whether or not it resonates with your own truth. So
Absolutely.
Well, I want to thank you, Francine, so much for coming and hanging out with me tonight. I know it's not been easy to connect. I can only imagine the amount of work that you had over the last couple months with all of the videos to watch for the hundreds of students who were finishing up the 300-hour from fall. So thank you for taking the time. And for everyone who's watching and listening, join us on Thursday nights at 6 p.m. And if you can't find it, come find me and I will help you. Or head over to Yoga Farm Kundalini community and check it out and just hang out there and get to know the people in the
Yoga Farm Kundalini community.
Yes, I love it. So thank you so much for tonight. I appreciate you, Francine, so much.
Thank you, Melissa.
Have a beautiful night.
You too. Good night.